the night the estuary mist swallowed the street lamps of Northbridge. My mother called to say that the season would have to be simple for my twins this year. She cooshed it in thrift store words: tight belts, bad season for her consulting clients, the furnace that wheezed itself into an emergency repair. But underneath the accounting, I could hear the old tremor in her voice, that violin string pulled taut between the appearance of generosity and the habit of rationing it. I said we'd manage. The twins were on the rug, drawing castles on the blank sides of last year's wrapping paper, turning the brown into light. Children know how to make an arena out of whatever floor fate gives them. They looked up when I covered the receiver and mouthed, "All good." I have never been a good liar, but I am good at speaking softly around a bruise. They smiled, the way children smile when they swear they didn't see the welt. I put the kettle on and told myself that love, when it can't afford splendor, is allowed to arrive in socks and cocoa steam. Snow came sideways, one of those lake storms that turned our block into a snow globe shaken by a bored god, when the headlights fanned across our living room like a theater cue. My sister, Corrine, arrived with the timing of a parade, pearl-white SUV humming, doors swinging outward like the opening line of a hymn. Her children spilled onto the walk with the choreography of people who expect the world to meet them halfway. Coats the color of ripe pears, boots that wore their makers' names like small flags, hair arranged in helixes that cost more than the last 3 birthdays I had assembled out of thrift and daylight. They announced themselves by being audible. My twins, Theo and Junie, put down their crayons and went to the window to watch the cousins stage their entrance, and I could feel their breath shorten and sink as if their lungs had been stitched into one animal. Inside, the performance continued, ribbons that sounded like laughter when they were pulled, boxes whose lids were held down by names embossed in gold, the paper itself grander than any gift I had received as a child. A tablet, another tablet, a pair of blue high tops that looked like they were designed by meteorologists, concert tickets with holographic stars that shimmered when you tilted them. Corrine had always been good at conducting the air, so that it vibrated with admiration. She touched my mother's shoulder the way you touch a pedestal you're polishing, and my mother beamed with the same chipped, proud light that had softened her face for Corrine's trophies in high school, for her promotion at 27, for her engagement ring that arrived with a financing plan and a family blessing. My father, Gus, forever watching the weather, made a noise behind his newspaper, that rough laugh that men cultivate when they want to say, "Life's tough," without sounding like they care either way. "Market's brutal," he offered, as if this sentence could measure out fairness and find there was simply none left to serve. I buttoned Junie's sweater and then Theo's, slow as arithmetic. The world had shrunk to the tiny labor of my fingertips. When you have no wealth, you learn to handle your small rituals with ceremony. We stayed until the show ended, until the cousins' voices found a lower register, and the room finally remembered that it had walls. Then I gathered the twins' drawings, folded them like maps, and we slipped our arms into coats still warm from our backs. We left the way fog leaves a field, without fuss, without the dignity of fanfare. On the porch, the wind moved my hair like a second set of hands. I buckled the twins into our car, cheeks pinked with cold, and we drove home without the radio. I do not know what the word dignity means in a dictionary. I only know what it feels like to guide a steering wheel with both hands and keep my mouth close to the secret of your children's silence. Morning is braver than night. It asks you fewer questions. I made coffee thick enough to be a declarative sentence and opened my laptop. The twins were on the floor with last year's shoestrings, turning them into lassos for stuffed animals. I typed with care, an old picture of the twins stirring cocoa, their cheeks lit by the stove, and a caption smaller than a sigh. Not an accusation, not a memoir, just our kitchen, just us, the kind of truth that wears plain clothes. I wrote about mornings that are enough, and the way delight is a budget that doesn't need other people's currency. I didn't tag my mother. I didn't tag anyone. I pressed post and shut the lid like a person closing a gate on a pasture. I thought it would go nowhere. I have always underestimated my own voice, as if the world were a pond with a crust of ice and my truth too light to crack it. But within minutes, a humming began. First the cousins who liked everything, Then the aunt who never likes anything. Then neighbors who had been collecting their own grievances like ticket stubs. The texts arrived with the same tone, an astonishment that had been waiting for permission. Even the quiet cousin, the one who spent holidays folding napkins into shapes, wrote, "I see it now." I stood at the window with the phone warm in my palm, watched a man walk his dog through the snow, both of them leaving soft parentheses in the sidewalk. It struck me then how much of our lives now occurs in the spaces between who we are and what we post. It is frighteningly easy to curate the appearance of love while withholding the labor of it. Technology offers us 1,000 ways to substitute image for intimacy, to collate families into galleries instead of conversations. It's so easy to perform care and so difficult, in its shadow, to speak aloud about neglect without being accused of spectacle. I did not know it then, but I was enacting a refusal. I would no longer help compose the museum of our family's false generosity. The glass would have to show its fingerprints. By noon, my mother's text arrived, dressed in a tone I recognized from all the times I had asked for anything larger than a teaspoon. "Why would you humiliate us? You've made it look like we don't love your children." I put the phone on the counter and watched a bead of coffee slide down the side of the mug. Love, I thought, is not a costume. You can tell the difference between wool and velvet by touching it, and children spend their entire lives learning the fabric of a house with their bare hands. I typed back slowly, the way you cut a straight line through fabric you paid for in cash. "You've said there's no room in the budget," I wrote, "but somehow there's always room in the story, room enough for favorites to stretch their legs." I deleted it, retyped, deleted again, and finally pressed send. 3 dots bloomed and disappeared. The snow at the curb rose like an unmailed letter. Corinne's call came next, her voice strong with all the confidence that comes from being the person a family's camera points toward. "You made Mom cry," she said. "You ruined the day for everyone." I imagined her in that kitchen with the stone countertops, her children propped on stools like heirlooms. I pictured the gifts arrayed like medals and my twins' absence, a shape that no one would bother to outline. I did something I had never done with Corinne. I let her words hit me and fall. I didn't catch them. I didn't polish them into "maybe she's right." I simply said, "I told the truth I could afford." Then I hung up. It felt like returning a coat I had worn for 34 winters, surprisingly light. It would be easy here to say that I had planned long speeches, that I had arrived at great orations about fairness and what children remember. The smaller truth is this. I made a grilled cheese for each twin and told them they could eat on the couch. We watched a nature documentary about sea lions who take turns resting on the ice while the others keep watch. "They look out for one another," Theo said, his mouth full. "They know it's dangerous to pretend you're alone," I said, and only after I said it did I recognize the home in my mouth, finally, words that included me. In another life, I might have asked my mother for a conversation that would attempt to retrofit fairness onto the past. I might have brought ledgers of deeds and the receipts for all the handmade notebooks our children had sent, the drawings footnoted, the hope dated. But I had already done that, small and often, with a voice tuned to the pitch of what they could stomach. A body knows the difference between being invited to a feast and being asked to perform gratitude while you pour the wine. The aunt arrived that afternoon, the one we used to call the weather vane because she turned to face whatever wind my mother made. She stood on the stoop with a tin that once held cookies and now held nothing, and smiled the way people smile when they are about to ask you to apologize for your own pulse. "Your mother is devastated," she began, stepping in as if grief gave her a key. My living room suddenly felt like the stage of a reconsideration, nothing allowed to be as it seemed unless it could be spun. I let her talk in the familiar script of families who worship the smooth surface. This is about tone, about timing, about not making people uncomfortable. I took down a shoebox from the shelf, laid it in her lap, and opened the lid. Inside, 7 years of the twins' letters, those stained collages with macaroni halos, sloppy hearts, glitter that the vacuum could never quite banish. "They sent these to people who never wrote back," I said. "They are children." They kept showing up. The aunt looked at the letters as if they had spoken out of turn. She pat the box with her palm the way you pat a couch cushion to signal that something should disappear into it, stood up with a sentence half started, and left. The door clicked shut with the exact sound of a lid on a jar you don't intend to open again. I thought the quiet that followed would be a medicine. Instead, it turned out to be a verdict. No one called to ask how my children were. On the family page, Corrine posted her children with their new devices, blue-white screens singing in their hands. The caption used the words magical and blessed and grateful, that holy trinity of curated holidays. My children did not even appear in the blurred background of the frame. I stared not at the photo, but at the absence, the way the lens had practiced forgetting until it needed no rehearsal. I could have swallowed it, as I had 100 small injuries that dissolved only to reform. Instead, I posted another picture. The twins on the floor with a tower made of paperback books, both of them laughing because it leaned like a drunk man but would not fall. I wrote a single sentence about how love that measures itself in objects forgets how to touch. I did not name my mother. I did not name anyone. I only named the thing that had followed us into adulthood. The lesson that some grandmothers prefer the grandchildren they can hold up like mirrors. The messages became a weather pattern, some angry, some relieved, some blunt with praise I did not trust because it arrived in a storm. In the lobby of our apartment building, the super said, "Saw your post, took guts." The woman in 3B, who always asked after my plants, slipped a note under my door that read, "I thought I was crazy until I wasn't." And through all of it, a steady drum from my phone. You didn't have to go public. As if private conversations had not been the chapel where I had prayed for years. As if quiet were not the very thing that had been used to preserve the most precious artifact in our family museum. The story that we are generous people. My words did not expose them. The light did, and I had simply opened the curtains. It is astonishing how quickly a family can accuse you of disloyalty when your loyalty is no longer to their illusions. That evening, I opened a fresh document on my laptop and titled it a thing my mother would call dramatic, what they call cruel. I wrote small lines, not even sentences, inventorying all the ways we had been asked to interpret neglect as nuance. The year my son wore the same sweater to 3 holidays, while a stack of unopened gifts for another child was treated as daycare. The day my daughter made a watercolor of a lighthouse for my mother and was told that store-bought is classier. The vacation that was planned during my work week with the assumption that I could figure it out. The long, patient arithmetic of being the person who understudies love without ever getting the part. When I finished, I didn't post it. I saved it. It was not a weapon. It was a temperature, proof that I had not imagined the fever. That night, as the twins brushed their teeth, Junie asked the question that burned like a small coal in the back of my throat. "Did Nana forget us?" She said it the way one asks if snow forgets to fall on certain roofs. "No," I said. "She remembered your cousins louder." Children understand comparative adjectives better than adults do. Junie nodded and examined the window where frost had made lace of the corners. Theo took my hand and asked for a story, and I told them about the first winter we lived on the river, when the ice came in plates and the ducks walked across the mirror with more grace than we ever learned to. "You can walk on a thing that once tried to drown you," I said, and when they asked what that meant, I said, "It means we will be okay." I don't pretend that I was fearless. Fear is a tide, it finds the low places. In mine, I heard the echo of a younger self who would have negotiated the terms of her own vanishing. But I had been reading about families like ours, about how children raised in the glare of other people's performance are often told their needs are theater. The language is always the same. You're making too much of it, you're sensitive, you're causing trouble. It is an old trick to call attention the crime and neglect the misdemeanor. Healing, the wiser voices said, begins by naming reality and drawing a perimeter around your life that keeps you inside it. It is not spectacle to say, "I was unseen." It is self-rescue. I folded laundry while the twins slept and made a list of what I could control. The list surprised me by being short and golden. I could choose to stop performing gratitude for things that did not happen. I could choose to put my energy where it returned as warmth. I could choose to say no without annotating the no with guilt. And I could define, in silly specificity if I had to, the values our house would keep like a lighthouse keeps a lamp. What we need, what we refuse, what we cherish. Boundaries, I had once thought, were man-made fences meant to keep you from joining the neighborhood. I was wrong. They are coastlines. They are the shapes that let the sea be itself without swallowing the land. Articulate them. Implement them. Enforce them calmly. Prepare for the aftershocks. These are not the steps to meanness. They're the choreography of love that refuses to be counterfeit. Before I slept, I stood at the window and watched the river wear the moon like a scarf. The town was still. The posts would keep multiplying without my help. The phone would ring with people who confused being named with being harmed. But for once, I felt the outline of my own life like a glove that fit, the quiet clicking into place, the rooms of our small apartment breathing in a rhythm I could keep time with. If the family story wanted me to be the echo behind other people's lines, it would have to find another understudy. Tomorrow, I would make pancakes shaped like planets. Tomorrow, I would teach my children the economics of attention, how we spend it, how we earn it back. Tomorrow, when the river unfroze a little more, I would take them to the footbridge and show them how water insists on being water, no matter how many times winter tries to harden it into silence.